Tellstones, King's Gambit. This is a two-player abstract strategy game with elements of memory and a little bit of psychology thrown in there. Now this one was designed to be a board game that characters from the League of Legends video game actually play in that world. So in that fantasy world, they play this board game in the same way that we play chess in the real world. Now this one I said is a two-player abstract strategy game, and I'm not going to do my normal produced overview. I'm just going to kind of tell you how to play it, because there's a couple parts that I have to kind of talk through in a way. So the game starts off, there is a felt mat in the middle of the board. That's called the line. You have 7 what they call stones, and on one side of those stones there's a unique icon on it. The game starts with one of those stones face up in the middle of the line. On your turn, you have 6 different actions you can take. The first one is that you can point to any stone that's not on the board and tell your opponent to place that stone either to the left or the right of the line. The second action is you can point to any one of the face-up stones on the line and tell your opponent to turn it face down. You can also point to 2 different stones on the line and tell your opponent to swap their position. You can also pick up one of the face-down stones on the board, look at it, and put it face down again. You're basically peeking to see what it is. Now notice that the first 3 actions there, you were pointing to a stone and telling your opponent to carry out the action. It's kind of important here, so keep that in mind when we get to the review section. Now the next 2 actions are going to be how you score points or win the game. The first one is very simple. You can challenge your opponent. You can point to any one of the face down stones on the board and they have to tell you what it is. If they're right, they score a point. If they're wrong, you score a point. The last action is called boast, and this one's a little confusing on your first go, so stick with me here for a second. When you boast, you're telling your opponent that you can tell them what all the face-down stones are in the line with certainty. And they can respond to you in 3 different ways. The first way is they can say, "I believe you, you're fine," and you score a point. You don't even have to prove it. They're just saying, "Yep, I know you can do it, score a point." The second thing they can say to you is, "I do not believe you, prove it to me." And this is a little dangerous for them, because at that point, you're going to have to tell them what all the stones are and turn them face up. If you're right, you win the entire game. If you're wrong, they win the game. Now, the final way that they can respond to you is where it gets confusing. They can tell you, "I don't care, I can do it too." This means they're stealing the boast from you. And you then have to choose one of the first 2 options. You can't steal it back. You either tell them, "I believe you," and they score a point, or you tell them, "Prove it to me," and they have to prove it, either winning the game or failing, and you win the game. So that's kind of confusing there. And I have to tell you that the reason that is so important is this is essentially like you're gonna end the game at this point. Like it's come to a point where you're going to end the game, and you have to be absolutely sure that you can do it and your opponent can't do it, because when you do it, your opponent has all the power. They can steal it from you. If they're sure they can do it, they're certainly going to steal it from you and hope you make them prove it, and they beat you at that point. So boasting isn't going to happen that often unless you have the perfect circumstances. Otherwise, you're just going to be trying to challenge them consistently and scoring points doing that. All right, so that's how you play Tellstones King's Gambit. Let's start off by talking about Riot Games. Riot Games is known for making one of the most popular video games in history, League of Legends. It's huge. And they made their first dive into the tabletop gaming world with Mechs vs. Minions a few years ago. As a matter of fact, I did a video on it. I absolutely love it. Check out that video. It is a wonderful game. It's got the best production you've ever seen. Tons of beautiful miniatures, pre-painted miniatures, beautiful artwork, cards and tiles and metal coins and everything. It's absolutely gorgeous. And the gameplay is wonderful. It's a fantastic cooperative game. Now, their second outing here is a 2-player abstract game, the most minimalist side. You couldn't do more of a 180. And I can imagine that there's a lot of people out there that might be disappointed that they didn't do a follow-up to Mechs vs. Minions. They're getting this 2-player strategy game. And I sympathize with that. I even had that thought myself. I was like, man, I really wanted one of those big games again, and this is what we're getting. But I got to tell you, do not let it fool you. This game is incredible. Incredible. It goes to show that somebody coming in from the outside, people who design video games or something else, coming into the board gaming world and thinking differently. not utilizing the same mechanisms over and over again, following whatever trends are hot in the board gaming world right now. They're coming in and they're designing something special and something new. This game is unique and it is wonderful. The game design is as clever as can be. The only thing I can really compare it to is Hive. Hive is a 2-player similar style small game with kind of similar components, and Hive is a masterpiece. And this one is every bit as good. So let's start by talking about League of Legends. They use the League of Legends theme on this game. This is a game that is played in the League of Legends world. I don't care about that. League of Legends is cool. I like it. The world, I don't know much about it. So that doesn't really, motivate me to get the game. But why it's genius that they use that is this game is more than what it looks like on the outset. And by using the League of Legends world and showing that all these different factions within that world play this game and play it differently, gets you to understand the different ways you can play this game. This faction over here, they play very loyal. They're very honorable in the way they play. And this one over here, they're very cutthroat and they're manipulative and they try to distract you and they try to get into your mind and screw things up. And that's what this game's all about. You could play it any way you want. Anything goes. Distracting the player, manipulating the board, like having a conversation during the game to try to screw up their memory. That is all in this game. And using that League of Legends lore helps you understand that from the outset. So you just don't think, oh, it's just a memory game, whatever. It's way more than that. And speaking to the fact that it's a memory game, I'm not a huge fan of memory games, and you might not be either. But there is more to this than that memory game. First off, there's only 7 things to remember. 7 different icons. Remember which order they're in. Most people can do that. Little children can do that. Most of them can do it way better than I can do it. So that's not really the factor here. It's all about the psychology and getting into each other's minds. And one of the things that I brought up during the overview that's really important and awesome about this game is that they always have you telling the opponent to take an action. On your turn, you say, turn that stone upside down, and they do it. So this isn't like a shell game where you're going as fast as you can trying to confuse the other player. You tell them what to do and they do it in their own time, allowing them to internalize the move, memorize everything on the board in their own time. So you can't move fast and screw everybody up. You have to rely on the manipulation other than that. You have to rely on your own memory and you have to rely on trying to get the other player not to remember instead of just doing things real fast. And that's fantastic. It makes the game tense and stressful in such a wonderful way. And then there's scoring points. So we have the challenge. The challenge is the easy way to score points. You're trying to manipulate them, trying to manipulate the board, and waiting for that perfect moment where you think your opponent might be a little confused, and then you challenge them and you can score a point. You score 3 points, you win the game. So you could play that way. That could be your focus, is trying to do that, nickel and dime those points until you come to a win. But then you have the boast, which, if I was going to say there's anything negative about this game, it's that the boast is a little confusing. I even talked about that in the overview. It's a little confusing to understand at first, but once you get it, and it's fine. It's actually wonderful that it's there. It's a great mechanism. It's just a little convoluted. And the reason that it is the way it is because there has to be some danger to doing that. You have to have the perfect situation for that to work for you. I mean, in the positive realm, you have to make sure that you know every single stone, what they are and where they are before you boast, and hope that the opponent doesn't. So you have to come up with that perfect scenario. Or you could be bluffing and just have that bravado of like, I know what it all is, and I know that you don't know what it is, so I'm going to boast. And hope either they just give you a point or that you can manage to squeak it out, and hope that they don't already know what they all are either, because they could just steal the win from you. It's a really neat concept it's that climactic moment. When you're doing the challenges, there isn't that climactic moment. It's just nickel and dime the points. The boast is the big climax of the game. If you can pull it off, it's the brass ring, right? It's exactly what you want. I love that. And I love that mechanism is in the game, despite it being a little convoluted. And talking about who can play this game, Anybody can play this game. I mean, the youngest of young kids, the memory aspects of it, like I said, they can remember this stuff better than even I could. It's so easy to take that boast out and just play with the challenges at first until they kind of get the game down. And then you can add that boast in when you want a more deep experience. And I'm sure they can handle it just fine. So this game can be played by anybody. This game is, like I said, incredible. The game mechanisms are wonderful. It's fun. It's deep. There's an element of manipulation, an element of memory. The production is wonderful. This is the perfect Sunday afternoon, grab a couple of beers, sit on the back porch, and go through a bunch of games of Tellstones. This is a wonderful game design. And if you're into that kind of game, you absolutely have to try this game. I guarantee you'll love it. And you probably don't have any other games in your collection like it. You'll be happy you did. I cannot recommend Tellstones highly enough.
Thanks so much, everybody. If you've enjoyed this video, please do us a giant favor by subscribing to the channel and clicking that wacky bell icon. If you're into board games, miniatures games, role-playing games, we have a bunch of audio podcasts you might enjoy. You can find those at thesecretcabal.com or on iTunes and Stitcher.